What's up, gamers? It's Absurd here, and it's time to dig into some of the new gameplay and mechanics that we got from the new Armored Core 6 gameplay preview. There's a ton of stuff to cover in this footage, but the creators who played the demo cover most of that in their videos. So in this video, I'm going to look at some of the details that I haven't seen get as much coverage. So I hope that even if you've watched all the new gameplay stuff, you can still learn something from what I point out here. Let's start in this hub menu. If we look over here, we can see two interesting things. This says Cam 01, which implies that there are multiple different cameras in this garage, which will be cool for getting different angles and taking screenshots. The other part here says AC name Loader 4. I think the devs just gave it a generic name for the preview, and it seems like we will be able to store at least 4 AC schematics, although there may be a much higher limit like in older games. I was able to save well over 50 designs in 4answer. Moving into assembly, the biggest thing I noticed, or didn't notice, was hover legs. There is this clip from the gameplay trailer that suggested potential for hover legs, but we don't ever see them in the garage here. This could still be a secret that FromSoft is keeping, but it's looking grim for hover leg enjoyers, especially since a hover function is built into the quad leg parts. Leg parts also have insane weight limits that give a new sense of scale to the game. 4th gen Armored Core had the largest AC models, but the weight limit on these Raiden tank treads is only 21k, while the tank treads we see here in AC6 are over 100k. Now, I don't think this means the ACs and fires of Rubicon are 5 times larger than the necks in the 4th gen. These units of measurement are not standardized. For reference, this machine gun from 4answer weighs 673, while a similar machine gun in Armored Core 6 weighs about 2400. This is a ratio of 4:1, as opposed to the 5:1 ratio with the leg parts, so it may be that we are able to carry slightly more, but the relative numbers are pretty close. The last thing I noticed with regards to leg parts is how much AP they give. The AP values are relatively low in this game. Most of the builds I've seen are around 9 or 10k AP, putting them in the ballpark of the old gen games. But I did see a few chonker builds that got close to 20k AP. That AP value combined with the 4k repair kits and their additional OST upgrade puts the total potential AP well within the range of the 4th gen games. OST, for those who don't know, is a tuning mechanic in the game. You can earn tuning chips that can be spent on upgrades that seem very similar to how optional parts worked in the 3rd gen games. Next, I want to get into a few of the stats affecting how our AC functions. Stats like system recovery and attitude stability have been in previous games. System recovery has always been a bit mysterious to me, but has typically affected the ability to recover from camera and lock-on impairments due to stagger and other effects, while stability affects stagger from landing on the ground, firing back weapons, and generally being hit with attacks. Because the stagger system is changing in Armored Core 6, I expect these values to be more intuitive and well described, as they seem much more important to the gameplay than they have in the past. There is a new stat, Firearm Specialization. If you look at the arm stats in 4answer, you get firing stability and aim precision, energy weapon damage, and maneuverability. I'm thinking that this Firearm Specialization is a combined value of some of these stats. I haven't seen a detailed stat screen for the arms part yet, but it definitely seems like From is simplifying and combining some of these values to make them more approachable. Now, one thing I've heard debated a lot is the accuracy while hard-locked. People have said that hard lock is less accurate than soft lock, and that your crosshairs track slower while hard locked, but these things aren't universally agreed on. Having a lock in Armored Core has never meant that your attacks are going to land. Stats like arm maneuverability typically dictate how quickly you can track your fire onto a locked target. The expanded stat screen does have a target tracking stat that may be a combined value of other stats, such as firearm specialization or arm maneuverability, or even other functions of the fire control system. Another new stat is adjusted generator output on the core parts. The core part is where the generator is located. However, I'm not sure how different core parts would adjust the functionality of a generator. But a higher value here is better, and I noticed that the smaller cores typically have higher generator output adjustments, so it may be the larger cores drain the generator more or something like that. One interesting thing I noticed about this weapon is how the description calls out double trigger builds, seemingly a ranged weapon in each hand. Talking about builds in this way feels very meta and makes me wonder if this type of meta build terminology shows up more. It would be cool if the garage had some functionality in which you could choose build types based on this kind of terminology and have the UI curate a part selection based on the selected build type. I've neither heard nor seen any evidence for that, but I just felt that this description text felt a bit out of place and wonder if there's more to it. The last feature of the garage I want to mention is these little icons on the weapon screen. The first represents damage type, the second indicates weapon type, and the third is for reload/cooldown type. I'll come back to that one later, but there is a fourth icon that I only saw on this weapon, the stun baton. The stun baton induces an electrical discharge with repeated attacks, which seems a lot like some of the status ailment effects in the Souls games, bleed, poison, frostbite, etc. So I think we are getting similar status effects in this game, and weapons that apply those effects will be labeled with this icon. On that topic, I noticed in the Balteus fight that when we get hit by his flamethrower attack, we don't take stagger damage, but a frame after we take the damage, this ACS anomaly meter pops up. This reminds me again of the status ailment bars in Souls, where when the ailment fills the bar, it cashes out for an effect such as damage over time, increased incoming damage, or stagger. We see here that repeated damage from the flamethrower fills the bar, but unfortunately the cash out effect is edited out of the footage. Since ACS is our stagger system, ACS anomaly implies a debuff to how our stagger system operates. It will be interesting to see what that actually means and what other ailment effects are included in the game. Going back to the reload topic, it seems like attacks are balanced by a cooldown, either reloads or heat. Reloading seems like it may require an input, which may just be pressing the weapon button again while it's on reload status. I only say that because in these clips, the reload time doesn't seem standardized even for the same weapon, but it's not a big deal either way. The more interesting part to me is the heat cooldowns, which are demonstrated in the garage by this icon. This heat mechanic applies to melee weapons, which when used sometimes put you into overheat cooldown. The consecutive hit stat in the garage seems to govern how many hits you can combo with before this is forced on cooldown. The same principle applies to energy weapons if they are fired in quick succession. This cooldown-based design incentivizes cycling through all of your attacks like an MMO, where you can't really be effective by spamming a single attack, at least if the game is balanced properly. I noticed the overheat duration to be about 5 seconds, though this could depend on weapon and generator type. One of the big takeaways from this is that the melee-only playstyle does not seem very viable with this design. It would require great dodging and lots of shield block uptime to protect you during those long melee cooldowns. It will be fun though to try that out when the game drops. Now I want to get into the map functionality, which is compass based. If you've played Skyrim, you will find this familiar, but there are a couple neat additions that I noticed. Your facing in relation to the compass is measured in degrees, 360 or 0, presumably being the heading to return back to the start point. This may be important for certain missions, but either way, I think it is a fitting way to notate direction in a mech game. This compass also shows enemies in relation to you while also highlighting your locked target in this red box, which is a good, simple feature. Moving on, I've seen some mentions regarding how fast the turn speed is for these armored cores, and I agree that it does look super fast, but I want to note that the reticle speed is pretty slow. In older AC games, turn speed was super important because your AC facing was tied to your lockbox, but in Armored Core 6, the targeting reticle is separate from your AC facing. I think the slow reticle speed will keep the combat feeling like you are moving in an AC despite the high turn speed. It's definitely not going to play like an FPS where your turn speed is linked to your mouse speed. My final interesting thing of note is the unaware system. It's like a pseudo-stealth mechanic. I haven't seen anything yet suggesting there are build or playstyle options designed around stealth, but you can catch enemies unaware. Screen capping this unaware attack damage and comparing it to the attack power of the weapon in the garage makes it seem like unaware attacks do roughly double the damage of normal attacks. Nothing too game-breaking, but it's worth noting and potentially playing around to conserve ammunition on long missions. That's all I want to cover about the gameplay mechanics on this one. There's a ton I haven't covered, but if you haven't, check out creators like VodiVidya and Fightin' Cowboy to get a more general overview of how the game plays. I'm assuming most of you have watched a lot of these other breakdowns, and I didn't want to waste your time with stuff that you might have already seen. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you gamers in the next one.